Hi everybody, this review is on the movie The Substance. So the plot of this movie is this actress named Elizabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore. Yes, her name is really Elizabeth Sparkle. It's kind of funny. Uh, she's an actress, but mainly doing exercise aerobics type videos. But she gets fired by her producer Harvey, played by Dennis Quaid, claiming she's too old and wants a new, younger star to take her spotlight and her fame. So Elizabeth starts feeling depressed and really hates how she's now being treated due to her age. And she finds out about this thing called the substance, which is a black market serum that makes you look young, that produces a new, fresher, younger version of yourself. So, so Elizabeth takes the substance, and a new girl emerges from her body as she's fed through this vein tube where the substance doesn't exactly turn you into a new human. A new one just forms out of your body while you have to switch back and forth on a weekly basis every now and then. So Elizabeth goes through a big crisis where she turns into Sue, and sometimes she has to be Elizabeth herself, depending on what week the substance will allow her to take her body, and it shows the really bad effects that it has on the rest of her career. You know, this movie really surprised me. I actually had a lot of fun with this movie. Um, when I first heard about this movie, I was like, it seems interesting, but I don't know, it sounds kind of weird. And yeah, okay, objectively, this is a very weird movie, but I think that's really the charm of it. And a part of that's because we don't really get this type of uh, horror movie really much anymore. I mean, I guess maybe there's been like a couple indie films. I guess this was an indie film. I think given it had a really small budget, but it was a lot of fun, and I thoroughly enjoyed it because we don't really get this like type of body horror, gross out type film in the horror genre. Most of them are just either psychological thrillers or some kind of supernatural stuff. You don't really get the really nasty, grotesque type stories anymore. So I'm glad that they decide to bring that genre back. And given this movie is becoming pretty popular and it's getting a lot of praise, I think this might be end up being a good comeback for the subgenre. And even not just the fact that it we didn't see this type of film anymore. It's the fact that I think the plot is actually really good commentary on how people in the entertainment industry really feel about their looks, because the idea of Elizabeth having to use this substance just to be younger and keep her job in the industry, it really it really is a smart kind of jab at people who have like plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery and Botox and whatever. Because I don't know if it's just me, but I feel whenever you're famous and you have surgery, you look worse. Like you always look worse. Because I don't know. Have you ever seen someone with plastic surgery or Botox or whatever, and they actually looked better and like they enhanced like their face? Like I swear it, because I just feel it makes people look worse, and I think that's kind of like a funny little bit of irony because Demi Moore still looks great at her age. I mean, yeah, I know she's definitely not young anymore, but I think for her age, she still looks very good, and I'm glad that she didn't mess up her face or anything. I'm glad she hasn't had any problems, and I think that kind of made the casting choice a little bit funny and ironic. Is that it's about someone who wants to change their appearance to look young, while it's by someone who embraces her being played by someone who embraces her natural beauty. So I do quite like that was kind of a funny, ironic type choice. It was definitely a different type of role for Demi Moore, and I liked seeing her as a lead this time. I haven't seen a ton of films with Demi Moore. I've seen a couple of them, and I never really seen her as a lead. I still never seen GI Jane. I might check it out sometime soon, and she's getting a lot of praise for this performance, and I definitely see why. She is really good in this role. You can tell she's a character who's really frustrated by having to deal with a disgruntled producer and having so much pressure build up over her appearance, and she has to sacrifice herself through this horrific transformation, and it's and lots of the body horror that goes through it is just so grotesque and nasty, and it you really kind of feel the pain she's going through, and it's not an incredibly scary movie. Honestly, like I can see why some people would be scared by this movie. I mean, it is a horror film after all, but I honestly thought this movie was more gross than scary. But I mean, I guess some people are really squeamish when it comes to like bodies being mutilated and stuff. And there's sometimes it can get a little excessive. Like most of the shots in this scenes in this movie are Demi Moore in a bathroom trying out the substance and shedding a bunch of times from her skin, and yeah, it can get pretty gross, and yeah, it is a tad excessive. Like there's a lot of gross out, and you see a lot of nudity. Yeah, there's a lot of nudity in this movie, which I guess given it's a film about the human body and how your body manages to look through your appearance, I guess it makes sense why it would, but it's a really, really gross, weird movie, but it has a bit of a smartness to it. So it's a really good don't judge a book by its cover type movie. And yeah, it is a very gross and weird film, but it does have a really good jab at the message that you shouldn't change who you look just because of pressure and people thinking you're too old. I think there's really no beauty like natural beauty, so I think it's um, a, a good message that's kind of hidden in such a weird, gross movie. And Dennis Quaid plays Harvey, who's the main antagonist, and he's really good in this role. I don't think I've ever seen Dennis Quaid in a antagonist role. I mean, I know he was in that one horror film called The Intruder, but I never saw it, so I don't know if he was any good in that. But no. But I really liked how he was basically like the surly, grumpy producer who really is um, oppressive over people's physical appearances, and I think that really does make him unlikable, and it really goes against the message about how you shouldn't change yourself just to please people who hold views on how people look. And although every scene with Dennis Quaid was just so weird, like I swear I don't think there was a normal looking shot. Like the camera was so close to like his his face was like always this close to the camera. He was always looking like this. It was really weird. And there's like this one scene where Dennis Quaid eats shrimp, and he's like this close to the camera the whole time. Like he's like, and it shows like all the stuff on his mouth, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to see Dennis Quaid eating shrimp. I don't want to see greasy Dennis Quaid face. Like, why did this movie was already disgusting enough? Why did they have to include Dennis Quaid eating shrimp, or even all the weird scenes where he's looking at the camera like that? It's like Son of the Mask all over again. No, that's too far. I won't make that comparison. But yes, sometimes that all the Dennis Quaid scenes, like yeah, it is kind of distracting and a bit silly, but I guess it's one way to entertain you from when there's no gross out body horror, which okay, yeah, the shrimp thing was pretty gross, but yeah, I do think that whole aspect maybe could have been cut out because I think the whole body horror type stuff was already disgusting enough and it was shocking. I didn't need to see Dennis Quaid constantly eat grotesquely and having stuff all over his face. I feel it's fitting actually mentioning this in a horror movie review. I feel gross out is like jump scares. When used sparingly and they're built up well, I think they can be done well, but when gross out is used, if you make something nothing but gross out, it just loses its shock value and it just becomes stale. So, yeah, there's some moments. Yeah, I do kind of feel like maybe they could have dialed it back on a bit of the gross out because I think when it's more plot driven, it's more shocking and gross. Like I think sometimes they could have dialed it back on a little, particularly with Dennis Quaid eating shrimp or like actually he eats a lot. Dennis Quaid eats a lot of things, so that's when you usually see like close-ups. Like, bro, I don't want to see Dennis Quaid eating that close, at least. But yeah, it's well paced. It's disgusting, and it's not particularly scary. But I guess if you're really squeamish about what happens to the human body, I think it might frighten you. So it's a movie I didn't find particularly scary, but it was smart and it had good satirical messages, and I do think that it was a really fun film. It was very paced well. I don't think I wasn't even once bored throughout this whole thing. Like even when it doesn't tackle, the body horror aspects, I still was very interested in the story, and I think it was a really fun horror film. If you haven't seen it, I actually strongly recommend it. I don't know if I'd put it in my top 10 of 2024, but it would probably make an okay honorable mention. I actually did enjoy it a lot more than I thought I would. I thought I was going to find this movie weird, and it was, but I think it falls into the category of lovably weird. Like it's so bizarre, but there's lots of creative out of the box things that I really appreciate, particularly lots of the gross out and all the practical effects. Like the makeup is so good. Like I said, like Demi Moore through a going through her transformation of having the substance affect her normal body, and like she grows old and baggy, and she starts balding, like she starts looking like Gollum. Like it's incredible makeup. If this doesn't get an Oscar nomination for best makeup, I don't know what you're thinking, Oscars, because for a small budget film, I think the makeup was phenomenal. So yeah, it's a really good movie, even though some of the stylistic choices are a bit questionable, i.e., close ups of Dennis Quaid eating. But I still think there's a lot of good scares, gross out humor, a gross out factor, and just some really good jabs at people who worry too much about their looks and looking young. So yeah, I actually recommend The Substance. I had a pretty fun time watching it. I don't think it'll be a movie for everybody. Some people might be turned off by the gross out or just a lot of the weirdness of it, but I think if you like films about the entertainment industry or you like the body horror genre and want to see it return, I think it's a good enough movie to check out. So that's my review of The Substance. So catch you later.